Okay, I'm back. So we'll try this again. I'll give you guys a while to get back on. I have no idea what happened, but this is live streaming and maybe some things just don't work out. So if you have any comments, I can monitor the chat. So if anybody wants to let me know if you can see me before I continue, I'd be happy to read your comment. Okay, Darlene, hello again. We'll try this again. Hey, you guys, this is new technology for me. I just got this new app, and this is the second time I've used it, so bear with me because, I don't have a technology expert here with me that's helping me with anything. I just have to, call people up and go online and read stuff. Okay, Darlene's here. Stacy, yeah, I had to redo the whole thing. I had to schedule a whole new thing, and anyway, but I figured it out and did it. So back to the beans. I love the black beans, just the midnight black beans. So go to Rancho Gordo website, order plain old black beans, order plain old pinto beans, order garbanzo beans. They always have these. They always have some kind of red bean. Let's see, I have a red bean around here. This is a Ayacote Morado red bean, but they always have red beans. And another one, I don't know if they always have it, but it's borlotti beans. These are Italian heirloom beans. They're the best ones. So if you can get borlotti beans, those are excellent. And then the other thing, it's not a bean, it's a lentil, but they recently started having these Italian lentils. They're called Puglia, Puglia lentils. And they're little brown lentils, and I don't know what it is about these lentils, but they taste really, really good. So if you can get the Puglia lentils, get those. And I've just got tons of them over here because I belong to the Bean Club. And if you belong to the Rancho Gordo Bean Club, every month they send you, or every 3 months, they send you a box of their beans. And I've heard recently that it's hard to become a member of the Bean Club. Basically, they don't have any membership offers right now. So you get on a waiting list, and then your name comes up. I think I was on that waiting list for a year, and then one day I got an email, and it said, you are now on the Bean Club, and we'll start sending you your orders. And it's like it was, I don't know what it is now. I think it's about $50 every 3 months, and they send you, I don't know how many, 6 or 7 different bags of beans. And they also sometimes, okay, Tia says it looks good. Bought some Mayakoba beans and need to cook them on the stovetop. I don't have an Instant Pot. Okay, we'll cover that. The other thing that they have really good is the popping corn. This is their crimson popping corn. I don't know what it is about this popcorn that's so good, but it's really great. And I have a silicone popcorn popper that I got on Amazon. In fact, on my Amazon store, you'll see it. It's a red popcorn popper. It comes in blue too. And you just put 1/4 cup of popcorn in there, put the lid on it, put it on the popcorn setting of your microwave, and when it's done with that setting, you have this bowl of fluffy popcorn, nothing on it. And then I spray it with you can spray it with vinegar, water, pickle juice. That's what Kathy Hester uses, pickle juice. And then you can put your, fine sea salt on it if you use salt, or you could put, nutritional yeast or whatever seasoning you like. Let's see, Facebook user. Central Market has a large selection of Rancho Gordo beans. Yes, they do. So the local grocery store carries them now. And a lot of the gourmet stores, I don't know if Whole Foods has them, but who knows. So today, and I can read my chat. So I'm doing this. I'm watching you on camera. I'm looking at the chat on my computer screen. So if I'm a little slow at responding, I will be back and forth looking. But I've done enough of these kind of cooking classes on camera that I'm pretty good at looking at stuff while I'm cooking. So because the cooking part for me is easy. It's funny that cooking is the content, cooking, making up recipes, figuring out what to use, all that stuff is so easy for me because I'm a chef and I've been cooking since I was 10 years old. So that's almost 50 years I've been cooking. So, cooking is not any big deal to me. What's the big deal to me is all the technology, the lighting, the cameras, the apps, all that stuff is my challenge. And I don't live with a teenager, or else I wouldn't have any problem. I told my 10-year-old grandson, I said, hurry up and grow up so you can be my specialist and come help me film stuff. And he said, okay, Grandma, I will. So anyway, that's my sad story. So let's talk about the white bean chili. So I have a tray here just like I do in my classes, and I don't have anyone to do a close-up, so you'll just have to bear with me. I think the camera's close enough that you can see everything as I take it out. But the big ingredient is the white beans. So I made these beans a couple of days ago. They're the white Marcella beans, which is a cannellini bean. And so here's the thing that happens. People, we eat a lot of beans. So, if you cook your own beans, it makes about, 5 cups of cooked beans when you make a pound bag. This is a pound bag of beans. So your pound bag of beans ends up making, I think it's about 5 cups of cooked beans, 4 to 5 cups of cooked beans. That's a lot of beans. It's like 8 servings, I figured it out. So maybe it's 4 cups. So that's like 2.5 cans of beans. Well, a lot of people don't want to eat that many beans because they make the pot of beans and then they're like, ugh, I have to eat these beans now. And maybe you don't have anybody in your household who likes to eat beans. Like in my house, Steve will eat them once in a while, but he's not that crazy about beans. His max is probably once a week. So then I'm left with all the beans to eat. So, what do you do with all these beans? Well, the first time you make them, when I made them the first day, just having a bowl of beans was really good, or whatever it was. I don't even remember what I made with them. I think I made soup. I don't know. Anyway, I enjoyed whatever I made with them. They were really good. And how do you cook them? Just a basic pot of beans. Someone said they were going to cook their beans on the stove top. So stovetop beans are what Rancho Gordo recommends. They say that you can use the Instant Pot, but they don't really recommend it because the Instant Pot doesn't seem to cook them as well. Like what happens is that the outside skin doesn't get as tender and the flavor doesn't develop because they're not cooking that long. So the standard way to cook beans, let's see, we saw 4 episodes of the Blue Zones, very interesting. Yeah, the Blue Zones, they talk about beans all the time. That's what the people who live to be 100, they eat a lot of beans. So eat your beans. But how do you cook them? Well, we're not going to cook the beans today because we're making the chili with already cooked beans, but I have a YouTube video called the Basic Rancho Gordo Beans, and I have the basic bean recipe, and I make some kind of chili or something from the start. So watch that, and that's the basic bean recipe. But I can tell you really quickly, basically I take the beans out in the morning when I first get up at 6 a.m. and I put them in, sort through and make sure there's no rocks or anything. I put them in a bowl, cover them with a few inches of cold water, and I let them soak, but no more than about 5 hours, because Rancho Gordo tells you don't soak your beans overnight because they'll start falling apart because they're pretty fresh. They're not like the commodity beans or grocery store beans that have been sitting around in a warehouse for a long time. So Rancho Gordo beans, sometimes some of them will start falling apart if you soak them too long. Do you have to soak them? No. A lot of the Rancho Gordo people just throw the beans in the pot with water and cook them, but it takes longer to cook them. Do you have to get fancy and saute a bunch of carrots, celery, and onions and garlic? No. I used to do that, and now more lately, I just throw the beans in the pot after they've been soaked for 5 hours, and then I'll put some chopped up onions and garlic in there, and that's it. And a lot of times that's my shortcut because I'm busy and in a hurry. And that tastes just as good as the basic bean method, which is to take carrots, celery, onions, and garlic, saute them in your pan, then add the beans and the water, bring it to a boil, which I do, boil it for about 15 minutes on a high rolling boil, turn it down to a very low simmer, cover it, and I never cover it all the way, I leave a little bit of space, and then let them simmer until they're tender. And Rancho Gordo will never say exactly how long to cook your beans. Lori says, I always use your recipe for my beans. Thank you, Lori. Rancho Gordo never says, here's exactly how long to cook your beans, because it varies. It depends on how old the beans are, I guess your altitude, how long you soak them, what kind of beans they are. And some beans, sometimes they'll take a long time, and other times that same bean will take less time. So basically you have to check the beans about I start out checking them every hour, and then after that every 30 minutes, because if you cook them too long, they'll just turn to puree, and then you can just have pureed beans and it's okay, but if that's not what you want. So that's the stovetop method. Now the stovetop method is great if you're at home. Like me, I work from home, so I can have beans simmering on the stove in here or in my other kitchen, and it's not a big deal. But if you are a person who comes home after being gone for 10 hours, that's not very practical. Well, that's when the Instant Pot can come in really handy. And you can just take about any bean, and Rancho Gordo, in their second vegetarian bean cookbook, the second edition, they have a really good table in there of Instant Pot cooking times. So if you're interested in that, I would get that cookbook. It's the vegetarian cookbook, second edition, not the first edition. And it's available on their website, and it has a whole table of all their beans. And that's a really good way to understand how to cook Rancho Gordo beans in the Instant Pot. So the beans I cook in the Instant Pot for Rancho Gordo, or garbanzo beans, chickpeas, for my hummus, I soak them for 24 hours. I put them in the Instant Pot for about 40 minutes, and they get really, really tender, and then they mash up really well for my hummus. And the other one that cooks really well in the Instant Pot is the black bean. For whatever reason, I've had really good luck cooking the black bean in the Instant Pot. I thought the beans should be cooked by themselves with nothing added during cooking. No, TS, with the Rancho Gordo beans, they always add onions, garlic, celery, and carrots, kind of a mirepoix it's called, but don't add salt until after they're almost done cooking toward the very end, and then you add salt if you use salt. That's the Rancho Gordo method. Now you can Google how to cook beans, and some people will say, oh, soak the beans in tons of salted water, and then they'll say add more salt. Well, as a lot of whole food plant-based people, I'm trying to decrease the amount of salt I use. Hi, Jiro. My cooking buddy is here, Jiro. Well, say hi. Come back here. They can't see you. I don't think they can see you here. Right here. This is Jiro, who used to be a tiny little puppy. Now he's a giant dog, and I'll have to wash my hands before I start cooking. Oh, here comes Cammie. Well, she went over to look out the window. So, but I'm trying to cut back on salt. So I don't want to soak my beans in salt, put salt on them, except for I'll put half a teaspoon in a pound of beans now. I used to put a teaspoon. Now I put half a teaspoon. And that's still, some sodium content. I'm going to wash my hands real quick. So, yeah, you can put carrots, celery, and onions. But, like I said, I would be cautious about putting salt. Just for two reasons. One is the old school people will say salt will toughen your beans, and then the other thing is, do you really want to have that much salt in your food? So that's where I stand with the salt issue. And that's the basic cooking process. Fancy or not fancy, Instant Pot is okay. Just be aware that if you ever do a side-by-side comparison, the beans that you cook just on the stovetop, I think will taste better. Okay, so let's make our chili. So what we're going to do is I'm first going to take out about half of my beans. So 1.5 cups of my beans are going to get pureed in the food processor. So I'm going to go ahead and do that now so I won't forget to do it. I'll put them in there and quickly blitz them, and then they'll be ready when we get ready to use them. And this will just take a second. Sorry about all the noise. Pureed them. You saw that was very quick. They're not super creamy or anything. They're just pureed to the point where they're not whole beans. And that's going to give us the texture and the kind of the thickness that we want. And so I've got all my other ingredients, and we're going to just start. I'm going to talk and I'm going to cook at the same time because I like doing that. And if you have any bean questions or any cooking questions while I'm doing this, be sure and ask me. So the recipe starts with a cup of diced onions, and I'm going to go ahead and do everything in front of you because for these kind of live demos, I really like just cooking as I would cook if I were here just cooking my meal. Because I think that people learn from that you see, how somebody actually cuts things, how they store things. I need a bowl from over here. Just kind of the whole process of cooking. And sometimes you can't get that when everybody's got all their stuff already measured out. You don't really get a feel for, well, how did you get to that point? How did you cut your onions? I cut the onion in half, I peeled it, and then I make a couple horizontal cuts, maybe 3. This is a huge onion. Texas onions are big, and I really get tired of recipes that say 1 onion. It's like, no, you don't know the size onions. This onion is, as big as my head, so I'm only going to use a cup of it. And then after I made my horizontal cuts, I rotate it and make some vertical cuts along the lines of the onion. Those of you who take my cooking classes, you've heard this a million times, so, bear with me. But that's just an easy way to get a whole bunch of chopped onions. So you see all my onions, because of my preparation there, they all came out really nice, and I'm going to kind of quit there. I'll have a lot left for another dish because I only need a cup, and this is a big mountain of onions here. That's plenty. So for the white bean chili, we're not going to use the classic mirepoix, which is carrot, celery, and onions. We're just going to use onions because we're going to keep it white. If we start putting a lot of carrots in there, then it's going to have little orange carrots in there, and we don't want that. So I've just got my onions in here. You saw that my pan was already hot, so start cooking your onions in a hot pan, not a cold pan, because if you put them in a cold pan, they're just going to sit there and not cook, kind of steam. We don't want that. So I have my rib of celery. I cut the very ends off. Don't cut big pieces off your vegetables because that's food waste. We don't really need to do that. Just cut off the little brown dried ends. And I'm only using 1 rib of celery because I'm not a super fan of celery. Some people might put 2 ribs of celery in this dish, and if you like celery a lot, you can put more. But this amount that I'm making only makes 4 generous servings. So, to me, I don't want to overdo it with any one thing. Celery can be overpowering. So I just rotate my celery, cut it into 1/4 inch diced pieces. And so everything is the same size. So my celery is the same size as my onions. Because you don't want to just have big chunks that are all different sizes, because then your finished dish doesn't look as good, or it doesn't look professional. Of course, remember, I went to culinary school, and not that that's the sign of being a great cook, but they did drum it into us that we had to do things a certain way. So it's stuck with me, good or bad. All right, so I have some garlic cloves here. And a jalapeno. So I'm going to put a jalapeno in here. If you really like spicy, this is my jalapeno I picked from my garden this morning. If you really like spicy, you could put habaneros in it. Who would eat a habanero pepper? Say something in the comments. I got these at the grocery store because I put them in my fried rice last night, and my husband said, "Why do you have all those habanero peppers?" I said, "Well, there was one in your fried rice. Didn't you taste it?" And he's like, "No." So he didn't even notice it. All right, so I'm going to take the end off of this jalapeno, and I'm going to chop it up, seeds and all, because the jalapenos from my garden are not very spicy, I don't think. If you're a person who has an aversion to spice, my 14-year-old son would. Speaking of sons, I have 2 sons. They're 38 and 40 now. But when they were teenagers, they thought it would be fun. This is my chopped up 1 jalapeno. You can put more. But my sons, they thought it would be really hysterical. They saw this somewhere. If they would take habanero peppers, those orange peppers, and coat them with chocolate, melted chocolate. And then they let them harden. They put them in the freezer and let them get hard. And then they took them to school. And then they would take out this bag of chocolate covered things, and the friends, their teenage boys are always hungry. Their friends thought they were chocolate covered candy. So they would give them to their friends, and their friends would put the whole thing in their mouth, and they would start, yelling, and got so mad at them. And I told them, I said, you're going to get in trouble for that. Somebody's going to complain. And sure enough, one day, some kid goes crying to the principal's office and says, they gave me this hot pepper, and I'm sick. And the parents called us and said, your son gave my son a hot pepper. So teenage boys, that wasn't the worst thing they did. They did a lot of other stuff too, but that was something I never forgot, and it was not my idea, and I did not buy them the peppers, but whenever I see a habanero pepper, I think of that. So my pan is on medium high over here, and I did not add water to it, which I think is something that's, to me, really strange, that people will tell those that are cooking. They'll say, oh, add vegetables to your pan and add water. No, don't add water. Let your vegetables brown before you add water. So if you could see my vegetables in here, you can't really see it that well, but they are starting to get light brown. And that means they've started to develop some flavor. That means some of the caramelization or the reaction of the sugars and the vegetables coming out are starting to happen. Now I'm going to add a couple of tablespoons of water because I can tell they're starting to get brown, and if I don't do that, maybe my vegetables will start burning. We don't want that to happen. So, and in the meantime, I'll cover the pan, because that's another technique I use, that because with a plant-based, no oil cooking, if you don't really cook your vegetables down till they're really soft and the flavor is mellowed, then your dish will have this real kind of strong, bitter taste, because the oil seems to mitigate some of the bitterness from the onions and garlic and stuff. So I found that by slowing down a little bit, making sure they're a little brown, then adding a little water, then adding and then covering it briefly, and not being in a big rush, because when I first started eating this way and following other people's recipes, I wasn't very pleased with the way the food tasted. It seemed like there was a lot of that kind of uncooked onion and garlic taste in a lot of the food that I did not care for. And I kept thinking, what, this food is not good. It needs oil. So Kelly says hi. Hi, Kelly. So, a lot of those early dishes, I really got a little bit sad because I missed the oil because of that problem. And then once I learned how to cook this kind of food better, and I started cooking it slower and covering it with the lid and giving it plenty of time to soften, adding water after it had developed its flavor instead of in the beginning, turning the heat up as necessary, up and down, like I'm turning it back up now because the water cooled it off, adjusting the heat up and down, and really cooking. I don't rinse, see, she says I don't rinse them after cooking. The beans, I think you mean the beans. I don't rinse the beans after cooking if they're homemade beans, because I know what's in them. There's no reason to rinse the Rancho Gordo beans because they're cooked in their own broth and they have a really good flavor. But when you buy canned beans, it used to be that the canned beans kind of tasted like the can, and they had kind of that metallic taste, or they had sort of a weird taste, or because of salt. A lot of times people didn't like the salt content in the beans. All right, so we're going to let that cook. And my recipe says we're going to be cooking all the vegetables for 8 to 10 minutes. So we don't want to be in a hurry with these vegetables. So what else are we going to put in here? We're going to put in some of our hatch chilies. And so let me show you the hatch chilies. These are hatch chilies that I bought this summer in August when they're in season here, and you can get them by the case. And then what you do is you peel the skins off, take the seeds out, and then most of us around here, we just put them in the freezer like this. This is like probably about a cup, maybe 3/4 of a cup of green chilies. And then we use them for the rest of the year until the next chili season. Yeah, thank you. What kind of beans are you using? I'm using Marcella beans. They're white cannellini beans from Rancho Gordo. So I've got these delicious mild hatch chilies, and I'm gonna dice them up. If you can't, I know this is probably not typical for the rest of you who don't have a freezer full of fresh hatch chilies that you got in August. So you can buy these in the can. So you can go to the store, and they even have hatch. They have hatch mild. Don't get hot unless you really have, a desire for super hot stuff. I'm making sure they're kind of small. And if you like super, super spicy, then get the hot. But these hot green chilies, Steve couldn't tolerate. I can't tolerate them either. Kelly's in the Rancho Gordo Club too. So this is about maybe a cup of hatch green chilies. So that would be like 2 of those small cans. And if you're not a big green chili fan, and you don't love green chilies like I do, then use 1 can, okay? You don't have to get carried away. I tend to like the green chilies because remember, these are fresh and they're really good. Okay, so now I'm going to add some spices. First, I'm going to get a drink of water, and I can read your comments. So those of you watching, I really appreciate it. It means a lot to me. I have not been publicizing these live streams yet because, like I said, I'm using some new stuff. And look what happened today. I had the problem with it flashing. I had to end it. I had to reboot my computer, create a whole new thing. So, I don't want to publicize that I'm doing this and then have a bunch of people watching and go, "What the hell, what's wrong with her?" So that's why I'm not saying much about this. Okay, I just bought some fresh hatch chilies. How do you get the skins off or freeze? Oh, okay. So if you buy fresh hatch chilies, you have to roast them first. And so what I do is I have a great big gas grill out here. So my quick way of doing it is I turn the grill up kind of hot, medium high, and I put all those hatch chilies, they're like fresh big chili peppers, throw them on the grill, keep turning them until they get all blistered, and then you put them in a plastic bag. And after a few minutes, the skin peels right off, and then you can do it. You have the green chilies without the skin. If you don't have a big gas grill, you can broil them in your oven. Most ovens have a broiler where you can get close to the heat. Like the heating element is at the top, and the broiler pan is underneath by just about 2 or 3 inches. And then you have to watch them really carefully, but they will blister and broil. And then lastly, you can use a stovetop chili roaster. I don't have mine in here because I wasn't thinking we were going to talk about this, but I have a stovetop chili roaster I got from the Santa Fe School of Cooking. And if Les Swanson watches this, he'll probably know exactly what I'm talking about because I think he bought one when he was in Santa Fe recently. But it's like a black thing that fits right over your gas burner. You have to have a gas burner, and then you can roast chilies. But yeah, you do have to do something. You can't just use the green chilies without roasting them or it tastes terrible. Okay, so a 1/2 teaspoon of ground cumin. I have a teaspoon here, but I'm just gonna kind of put half of it in there. Spices, you don't have to be so exact. Usually if I'm by myself, I wouldn't even use a spoon. To 1/2 teaspoon of coriander. And then chili powder. So let's talk about chili powder for a minute. Chili powder is not the stuff that you've had sitting in your cabinet for 10 years that's been in there for so long that you don't remember when you got it, and when you open the bottle of chili powder, it doesn't smell like anything. Chili powder is really important. If the chili powder is not good, your dish won't be very good. So I get my chili powder from the Santa Fe School of Cooking because it's really fresh. So that's what this is from. And this is just standard red, I think it's medium authentic red chili powder. I'm going to put a teaspoon in, but use 1/2 teaspoon if you're sensitive to chilies. And then I also have, habanero chili powder. Woo! I got the whiff of chilies in there. I do not recommend you use this except for very sparingly because it's so hot, it's almost uncomfortably hot. So by sparingly, I mean I'm going to put some in my pan, but I'm going to put 1/8 of a teaspoon. That's how sparingly. But it gives the food the most delicious taste, the habanero powder. And if you don't like that spice, they also have a green chili powder. And that's pretty mild. This is like having hatch green chilies almost. So, you know, that you can order all this stuff online. I go there in person and get stuff all the time. I'm going there soon and I'm going to stock up on lots of stuff. They have classes there. Of course, none of them are oil-free, of course. Okay, so I've got my chili powder. Look how beautiful this is looking. I've got the hatch chilies, the onions, celery, garlic. It smells wonderful. And because I've been patient, it's been cooking for quite a while, and it's not burning, it's not drying out, it's cooking well, but not too much. Okay, 1/2 teaspoon of salt. I'm gonna get 1/2 teaspoon. Yes, I'm using salt. And do you have to use salt? No. I know there are a bunch of you who are probably salt-free and don't use any kind of salt, and that's fine. What I have done is I had a lot of trouble being 100% salt-free. So instead of doing that, what I'm doing is I'm keeping track of my sodium and trying to stay under 1,500 milligrams of sodium a day. And by doing that, I've cut way back, and I'm very conscious of everything I eat. So I count up the sodium milligrams, pretty much anything I make. And then I go back and say, okay, well, this dish per serving has 200 milligrams of sodium. And, you know, that may not be 100% perfect, but it's working for me. My blood pressure's good. I haven't had any problems. And the average American eats a lot more sodium than that. So, you know, I'm doing what I feel like doing. Okay, so we're going to continue to let this cook. I'm going to add a little water to it. And I want to let it cook for like 5 more minutes. And I'll tell you what else is going to go into it while this is cooking. And if there's any questions, I can see your questions and comments. So be sure and ask me anything. Now let me ask you a question. What's your favorite bean? Okay, if you make Rancho Gordo beans, what is your favorite bean? And I'll watch the comments so I can see. So all we have left to add are our beans. It's going to have a total of 3 cups of beans. And I've already got a cup and a half. Remember, I pureed them in the food processor. Now, there are other ways you could do this. We could put all the beans in here and take an immersion blender and blitz it, or you could use your blender, or you could just mash them with a potato masher. So, you know, they're just different. Every way to cook has variations. So don't get too caught up in, oh, I have to have all this equipment. You don't have to have it. You know, you can just have all manual equipment. You can have a potato masher to mash stuff. You don't have to have food processors. You don't have to have blenders. I use these hex-clad pots and pans and skillets. You know, do you have to use hex-clad? No. You know, I just like them because they're non-stick. Random question. Did your A1C drop when you started weight training? I love pinto beans. Well, I never had any issues with a high A1C. Thank God, my blood sugar is always very normal and low, so I never had any issues with blood sugar. So yeah, but my blood pressure is always improved when I exercise. So no problems with blood sugar. Okay, cranberry, garbanzo, domingo red, Rancho Gordo has been eye-opening. Yeah, this one says, I like them all. Good Mother Stallard, King City Pink, garbanzo. Yes, Good Mother Stallard beans were rare to get for a while. They didn't have them anywhere, and now you can get them. In fact, you can just order those. Good Mother Stallard is the name of the bean, and it's a very dark brown bean. It's very rich. It has a really good aroma, and it's a good bean just to eat by itself. So yeah, glad to hear you guys like a lot of the same beans that I like. Now, my least favorite beans, and I hate to even say this, but I know they are because I hardly ever make them, are the lima beans and the runner beans. Any kind of red runner bean, lima beans, a lot of those I don't love for whatever reason. I just don't like them that much. So I like the red beans, the pinto beans, and the black beans the best. Now today I'm using white beans because I have so many, I need to use them up. Okay, so now what I'm going to do, speaking of beans, I'm going to add the beans. So you can see my pan is steaming, everything is cooked nicely. It takes, and I'm not draining, I'm not rinsing my beans. I'm going to use a cup and a half. Now I have this many beans left. So I'm going to go ahead and put them all in here because there's no reason for me to save a cup of beans. This is not going to change my recipe if I use all the beans I have. Agree with you on the lima bean family. Yeah, I don't think I'm alone, so, you know. But some people like those white, fat white beans. Like there's other fat white beans that are not lima beans that taste really good, like I don't know what they're called. They're like Italian beans, but they're like gigantic white beans. Those are really good. Okay, so I added the beans. Let's add the broth before we add the pureed part. So let me talk about this for a minute. In an ideal, what about baked beans? Baked beans are good too. I have a baked bean YouTube video. So search Julia Dunaway baked beans and you'll see it, and they were really good. So let's talk about vegetable broth, vegetable stock. You can buy vegetable stock at the grocery store, but it's expensive. Like, you know, what, $3 or $4 for a box of it. And if you don't use it all, it's going to go bad if you don't use all 4 cups. And I rarely would ever use all 4 cups. So there's that part. And then the ones that have sodium, they taste pretty good. But the problem is they're high sodium. So then I would start thinking, this really tastes good, but it's high sodium. So then I would dilute it and make it low sodium. And it was good, but still I had to always buy the broth. So then making your own vegetable broth, you can do that. But then that means you have to save all your carrot, celery, onion scraps, whatever you use, green lentils, I use garlic, and then I would make the stock. But the problem I had was I was running out of freezer space because I'm always experimenting and cooking recipes and making all kinds of stuff. So my freezer space was really limited. So then I would have the problem of having all this vegetable stock in big containers. So I said, I'm going to try something different. So lately, what I've been doing is I've been using organic vegetable base because it's convenient and it doesn't require buying things of stock. So this is organic. It doesn't have anything too weird in it except, you know, it has yeast extract, but it's okay. And the other thing is it tells you exactly how much sodium is in it. And I use the least amount possible. So like for this recipe, I use like 1 teaspoon of this Better Than Bouillon paste for 4 cups of water, okay? So that means the entire amount of vegetable stock that goes into this dish, the 4 cups, it has 710 milligrams of sodium. 1 teaspoon of salt has like 2,300 milligrams of sodium. So a lot of stocks have a total of something like 500 milligrams per cup. So the one I used to use a while back had like that much, then I would dilute it so it had less, but that was even too much. So now I'm using this one. I freeze excess broth in ice cube trays. Great for adding a little. Yeah, that's a good idea. But when you need 4 cups of broth, having 4 cups of frozen vegetable broth takes up a lot of room. And so I just said, forget it, I'm going to do it this way. And it works for me. Okay, so then I'm going to go ahead and add the pureed beans too right now. And you saw me, I did this in the very beginning, maybe you missed it because of our technical difficulties, but I took half of the beans, about 1.5 cups, I put them in my food processor, and I processed them, and it took no time at all. It probably only took 30 seconds because the beans are already soft. So, that's not hard to do at all. Puree cooked beans. Let's see. I use it better than bouillon paste too. I use the no chicken one. Okay. Yeah. Whatever you use, I would say just be mindful of the sodium content of it. And, if you're somebody who's watching your sodium intake, be mindful of the amount of sodium that you eat in all the food that you eat, because, you can get too much. And, in cultures, in places where there's no high blood pressure, they don't use salt. And I've heard this on many of these plant-based doctors' lectures, that they say where there's no salt, there's no high blood pressure. So if that's an issue for you, cut down on the salt. If it's not an issue for you, maybe you don't have to worry about it. But, I find that for a lot of people, it is a concern. I'm going to kind of whisk my soup. I'm going to bring it to a boil and let it simmer. And it's going to simmer for about 15 minutes. And then it has to thicken. And then it kind of becomes more of a reduced version of this chili. Right now it's a little watery, but that's because, it hasn't really had much time. So I'm using my little mini whisk to thicken it, and I've got the heat turned up, and I'm bringing it to a boil. And then I can get a spoon, and I can taste it to see what it tastes like. I know you can't see it very well, but it is, I'll bring it up to the camera. You can see right now it looks like veggie broth with beans, but I'm pretty sure that the taste of it is fantastic. So I'm going to get my spoon. Should have had this out. Let's see. Hi, Chef Julia. Yeah, hi. On right now, it says Facebook user on some people's names. I'll see your names later. That's very good. My vegetables are still, the celery is a little crunchy, which is not good. I didn't cook the celery long enough. So yeah, the vegetables needed to cook a little bit longer. So taste your vegetables when you're doing this. Don't just assume that they're fine, because I should have tasted them when I was cooking them, but they taste fine. It's not like a bad raw taste. Okay, so I've got everything in there except for, oh, nice spicy taste. What a good taste. I have to say that this is going to be a great soup to pull out of the freezer, or chili, chili or soup. The other ingredients that are going to go into this are corn, and this is corn, I just pulled it out of the freezer. So, it's not fresh corn, but if you had fresh corn, like right now, fresh corn is in the grocery store. I saw some today, and I bought some for tomorrow or for Sunday for a family dinner. And then the other thing I'm going to put in here is about half a cup of cashew cream. You do not have to put cashew cream in the soup. It actually tastes fine without it. Remember, it's white beans, so white beans are often used to replace cashews, so you don't have to put cashews in it. But I love the taste of creamy soups that have a little cashew cream in them personally. And for all these servings, my little let's see, this is probably not quite half a cup. I'll scoop it out and measure it so we'll know for sure. But I don't find that to be a problem for myself. I think this is more like a third of a cup, so I'm going to measure it out so we know for sure. But if it's a problem to you, then by all means skip the cashew cream. And my cashew cream is kind of frozen, and I'm going to explain to you why. So what I do, now this is actually more than a third of a cup. What I do a lot is whenever I need cashew cream for something, I make it and I freeze it. What I don't use, I freeze it in these little 2-ounce containers, and somebody said they like to use silicone ice cube trays. They have so many different things out. I recently ordered some silicone containers that you can freeze stuff in, so it's not quite half a cup of cashew cream. So I should be getting those soon, and I'll be able to start using those instead of plastic cups. I'm trying to cut back on plastic and disposable stuff. So that's what I'm going to be doing in the future. But I do that with salad dressing too. So for salad dressing, I make the salad dressing and I freeze it in those little 2-ounce cups, and then I can take it with me if I'm going to a restaurant or to somebody's house for dinner and I know they're not going to have my kind of dressing. So I do it with cashew cream, because then when I want something for my soup, I've already got it done. I don't have to soak cashews and make cashew cream. And I can make, queso, cheese sauce. I can make, all kinds of stuff that take cashew cream. And, if you don't want to use cashew cream, you never have to use it. It's just something that, for me, I like it. Okay, so this is coming to a boil, which is great. And it's starting to smell really good, starting to look really good. And it's not going to be ready before our video is over, but I'll still take some out and plate it to show you how it's going to be plated. Because technically what we need to do is let it simmer for 15 minutes, then add the corn and cream. But I'm going to go ahead and add it early because it'll still be okay. I'll cook it after the video's over. I'm going to sneeze. So this is a creamy white bean chili with corn and the cashew cream. However, like I said, you can make it without cashew cream and without corn, because maybe you don't like those things. Maybe you want to put some cooked potatoes, leftover Yukon Gold potatoes. Let's say you like potatoes. So take some of your leftover potatoes and put them in there. But it's a white chili, so make sure whatever you put in is light colored, because then it's not a white chili anymore. Then it becomes, like a regular chili. So that's the only thing I would caution you about, is if you want to call it a white chili, keep light colored stuff in it. This recipe is also really good as a basic chili recipe. Okay, so how could you make this a chili recipe instead of a white chili recipe? Well, you could use tomatoes. Use a couple of cups of canned tomatoes instead of all vegetable broth, and then you'll have the red color of chili. And then you could also use a little bit more chili powder, so then it becomes red. It's not a white chili. And this is very similar to my recipe for chili. Okay, that's a great tip for the salad dressing. Thank you. Well, I follow the Daily Dozen and oil-free way of eating, and the big thing that stumps me a lot of times is having a salad with. I can't have a really good salad dressing, I don't really want salad. So I like having my own dressing, because I'm not a person who likes the taste of vinegar and lemon that much. I know some people do, but that's just not my taste preference. If you hear some snoring, I do have to point out where it's coming from. See that boxer over there with his head on the pillow? Yeah, that's where the snoring is coming from. He's over there snoring up a storm, which is what the dogs do. He's comfortable. Okay, so I'm going to go ahead and put my corn in. And, it occurs to me that there was an amount of liquid on my beans because I didn't rinse them off. So I think they did have some liquid left on them, so I probably should have cut back about a cup of liquid. So if you make this recipe and you use beans that aren't drained, like beans that you've just freshly cooked, and like mine had just come out of the refrigerator, so the sauce was kind of clinging to the beans, so they may have had a little extra liquid, and I didn't account for that. So my white bean chili is probably a little runnier than what I would like it to be. I would probably like it a little thicker. So how can we thicken this more? Let's say that I decide that it's not the thickness that I like later on, and I say, oh, this chili is good, but it's not very thick. What do you do about that? Well, that's easy. I can take out more of the ingredients, and I can put them in the food processor or the blender, blend them up and put it back in, and that will make it thicker. The other thing you can always do to thicken something up is you can make a slurry. And a slurry is, you can take a little bit of flour, cornstarch, tapioca starch, mix it with water, and then add it to your soup, and it will thicken it up, kind of like how you make a gravy. So you can always do that. Don't despair if something isn't what you thought it was going to be. But this looks really, really good. And I'll show it to you in a minute. I need to get my pot holders. It's really getting to be a nice color. I'm trying to find my little piece of frozen cashew cream to get it to incorporate more. But yeah, I think it's melted now. But this is just lovely. I'll taste it now that I've got the cashew cream in it. That's so good. It's got a really nice depth of flavor from the habanero powder, the green chilies, the red chili powder, the New Mexico spices. Have you ever made a Mexican pinto bean soup? Yes. You can just take like a basic charro bean recipe and then, kind of thin it down. I'll get my pot holder here. Yeah, so just make the same thing. Make this recipe just like what we made, except use pinto beans. And you could use, instead of all the creamy things, you can just use a good broth, a vegetable broth. Use a little bit less than I did. And there you have a pinto bean soup. Okay, so what we have here is this delicious, luscious white bean chili that I think will be better once it's cooked down a little bit more. But we're going to go ahead and plate some up, and I'll show you how to garnish it. So when you get ready to serve it, you know what to do with it. So I'm going to pretend like it's done. It needs a few more minutes. But when this is over, I'll throw it back in the pot. So I'm going to put some in my bowl, and it really is like a soup right now. It needs to be thickened up a little bit. And I think when I get off camera, I'm going to take some of it out and put it in my food processor and thicken it up and add it back in so that it'll have a little bit of thickness. I'm not going to add a slurry of flour. I don't really want to change the basic flavor of my chili like that. Okay. Did the celery get softer as you cooked it? Yes, the celery did soften up quite a bit, so it tastes good now. Okay, so what are we going to put on top of this? Let's put a little bit more in here. That doesn't look very generous. That looks kind of skimpy. Make it generous. Got the heat turned down to low. I think you guys will really love this. It smells so good in here, and it's going to taste good. It's got so much flavor. It does have some salt, but not tons of it. Just enough, but I think even without the salt, it would taste good. So, fresh jalapenos. I know not everybody likes chili peppers, but it looks so pretty on there. So put a few slices of peppers. And then I have my cilantro in the fridge here. Just a few little fresh cilantro leaves. Looks really nice. And always dry your cilantro, like wash it really well and then dry it before you use it, because if you don't, your cilantro is all wilted. Okay, so little cilantro right there. And then we can put some avocado. Do you have to use avocado? No, you don't have to use avocado. But avocado is really good in this white bean chili. This would be a really good dish to make when you have people coming over, and you can put out all the chili toppings like your avocado and jalapenos, cilantro, and I'll talk about some other toppings in a second. And then people can put their toppings on it. And then the plant-based people like this, but I found that this is the kind of thing that non-plant-based people like too. It tastes good to everybody. So we can put our few slices of avocado in here. Just a couple. That makes it look really pretty, and it kind of melts into the soup, and it tastes really good. Okay, a couple other surprise ingredients. We could put, maybe some of you don't like red onions, but I love red onions. I wouldn't be averse to putting a couple of red onions on top of this. But you don't have to. You can put scallions. And then another ingredient that you could put, I use this as a topping. So, because my husband loves these tofu crumbles. So I make chorizo tofu crumbles, Italian tofu crumbles, Asian tofu crumbles, and I always have them in the freezer. And these are not frozen. I made them for something else. But I know that sounds weird, but tofu crumbles taste really good on top of this kind of thing. It makes it taste to your husband or the people that, some people miss their meat. So if I put something like the meaty, crispy tofu on stuff, my husband will be really happy with it. He'll think it tastes like something he's used to. And then last but not least, I have tortilla crisps. So I made these yesterday for my salad. And what I did was, here's my finished soup, or white bean chili. So what I did to make those tortilla crisps is I took these, they're called Mi Rancho Thin Credibles, and they're super thin corn tortillas. I ordered them from their company, Mi Rancho, and I heard about them from Kathy Hester and Chef AJ. And they're so thin that if you cut them up into little strips and put them in your air fryer or oven, in a matter of minutes, like 3 minutes, you can end up with a whole tray of these delicious tortilla strips. And they stay really nice, and they taste good on salads. So like if you have a salad and you want to crunch it up, like I miss things like that. And if you don't want to use nuts and you don't want to use croutons made from bread, this is an option. These little crispy tortilla strips, they're really good. So, you can use those. Let's see, what else could you, a lime wedge. I forgot to get my lime. So we could put a lime wedge on here. And when you get all of these different layers of flavor, what brand of what? The tortillas, Mi Rancho, M-I Rancho, and they're called Thin Credibles, like incredible but thin credible. That's the name of it. And when I heard Kathy Hester talk about it, I immediately ordered them online at the Mi Rancho site. Now it's starting to thicken up. Oh, you guys, this is getting nice and thick. It just needed to reduce and simmer. It looks so good. So yeah, make the tortilla strips, the avocado, the sliced jalapenos, the cilantro, even top it with red onions, tofu crumbles, whatever you like. So, people like me who've been doing this for a few years, I like to amp my food up so that it has a lot of flavor, even a little lime juice sprinkled on here, because how boring is it if your food doesn't have any good taste, it doesn't have any depth of flavor, it doesn't have freshness, it doesn't have acid, it doesn't have freshness. You'll get bored of eating this way, whole food, plant-based, no oil, because you'll miss the easy kind of flavor that you get from salt and oil and stuff that maybe you ate before processed food. So, that's why I take a lot of care and time to make things that taste really good. And the other thing too is if you're eating the plant-based diet and you're not snacking all the time, okay, like you eat your 3 meals a day and try to stay away from snacks unless you really need them, then you're hungry at mealtime. And our food is plant-based food with limited salt and no oil. It tastes a lot better when you're hungry. Because I've heard this over and over. People will say, oh, I just don't feel like eating beans. Beans are boring. I don't like beans. I don't like plain food. I don't like vegetables. And I had a friend, a client, who went to a retreat, and it was kind of a partial fasting, and it was, for people with serious health problems. It wasn't the one that, I can't remember the name of it, Chef AJ and everybody attends. It was a different one. It was in Costa Rica. And she said they fasted and fasted and fasted, and by the time they got their food the first day, they were given a bowl of plain beans, and they were some kind of black beans or something. They had no salt in them, no seasoning, nothing. They were just plain beans. And she said those were the best, that was the best food she ever ate, because she had not eaten anything. Her taste buds were clean, and just this plain old beans tasted heavenly. And I find that to be true with a lot of the things that I eat. If I've been eating things off of my whole food plant-based lifestyle and indulging in stuff, then my food doesn't taste as good. It kind of loses its appeal because I've got the coating of oil or the taste of the processed food or the, if you study the standard American diet and processed food, a lot of the food that we're tempted with has been, engineered so that it's very tempting and it excites our palate. And so that's why, when I was young, I could eat a whole huge bag of Dorito corn chips. And I couldn't stop. I would just eat the whole bag. It was a lot because they were so addictive to me. They tasted really good. They were crunchy and salty and cheesy. And so, the processed food that maybe we grew up eating is so tempting because it does have flavorings in it that make us want to eat more. Like, remember the old, I don't know if you're old enough to remember the Lay's potato chip. You can't eat just one. It really was true. It was hard to eat one potato chip because once you get the taste of the fat and the crunch and the salt texture, you don't want to quit. Okay, so how does our chili look now that it's been simmering for a while? Much better, much thicker, a lot more body to it. I'll bring it up closer so you can see. It's totally different. It's thickened up so it's more like a chili and less like a soup. And I guarantee you that the flavor is out of this world. And you saw how simple it was. It really didn't require much other than, a whole box of Kraft mac and cheese. Somebody used to eat a whole box of Kraft mac and cheese. Yeah, because, once you take a few bites of that, it's got that cheesy powder and the butter. It's salty. Yeah, at one time, I weighed, 50 more pounds than I do now and kept that weight for a few years. And, I would not stop at one serving of anything. I just would keep eating it and keep eating it and keep eating it. But I don't find myself doing the same thing with this kind of food. I find myself I'll enjoy this serving. And this recipe, this looks like it's going to make about 6 servings because I added extra beans. So let's talk a little bit about what do we do with our soups and chilies after they're made. And depending on the size of your TS says that chili looks great. It really is delicious. And I haven't even tasted it with all the toppings on it, especially those little tofu chorizo things. So I make this kind of thing. We're not going to eat all this in 3 days. My husband will eat it tonight. He's not going to want it again, I guarantee you. He'll eat other stuff, but he won't eat this 2 days in a row. He's just like that. So then what will happen is I'll put a serving of it aside for myself to eat maybe tomorrow, maybe for lunch. And then that will still leave me with maybe 3 more servings of it. So then what do I do with that? Well, this is my stockpile, I call it. And what I'll do with it is I don't have any in here, but I'll get little glass bowls. And I like these like 2-cup bowls because to me a serving of this is about 1 1/4 cups. That's for me, that's my ideal serving size. 1 1/4 cups, not a cup, not 2 cups, 1 1/4 cups. Because that's enough, but not too much. And I'll freeze, first I'll put it in 1 1/4 cups portions. I'll measure them out, and then I'll let it cool completely. Don't put hot stuff in your freezer. I'll let it cool while we're eating dinner, after dinner. I won't leave it out longer than a couple hours, but once it's cool, then I'll put a lid on those bowls, and I'll put them in the freezer. Once they've been frozen, if you wanted to, you could take them out of the container and just freeze the blobs of soup or chili or whatever it is. I usually just leave it in the container with the label on it, white bean chili, September 15th, 2023. And so I'll probably have 3 containers of this chili in my freezer. And what I love about this is on days where I don't feel like cooking, which is, there's quite a few days where I'm running around. I just got home. I've been out shopping. I did something with Steve. We went somewhere, and especially lunchtime. So, I'm going to run around and do a bunch of stuff. I'm not going to have time to make lunch. So I have a whole stockpile in my freezer right now. I have curry squash soup. I'm going to have this. I have spaghetti from my pasta class the other day. I have a bunch of little things of spaghetti. I have lasagna, white lasagna with the cream sauce. I have red lentil soup, and I think I have some fried rice now. So think about that. I've got fried rice, a couple kinds of soup. I'm going to have this chili. I have red chili in there. So I have all this food stockpiled in my freezer already in individual portions. And then what I do with it is I heat it up, and I have these new containers. I ordered a bunch of these. They're any day glass microwave containers. And this is the small, but I have a little bit bigger one. It's a medium one. And I reheat my frozen stuff in these, and it reheats everything really well. Okay, like you, I do not like the taste of oil anymore. Very hard to eat out, especially when you also go organic only. Yes, you're right. When you go out and eat, and the food is just soaked in oil, to me it doesn't taste good anymore. And I used to miss that taste, but I truthfully can tell you now that when I eat stuff that's oily, I don't have that reaction anymore. I don't think, oh, I missed this. I think, this is going to coat my mouth with oil, and I'm going to wake up tomorrow morning with a bad taste in my mouth. That's exactly what I think now. So, but yeah, stockpile your food in the freezer if you can, because in talking to people who want to be successful at eating whole food, plant-based, no oil, we have to do some preparation because our food is not available readily. You can't just go to the store and while you're out shopping, stop off at the fast food place and order something like this. It does not exist very, very easily. There are places that will make it for you, but not that common, especially down here in Texas. So, what do? You either bring food with you, which I do all the time. If you follow me on the Chef Julia support group on Facebook, you see what I eat every day. And so if I'm going to be gone from the house for a few hours, I pack a lunch with me. Even if it's not lunchtime, I'll still take my lunch box, like the cooler bag. I'll put an apple, some hummus, and some vegetables, or I might even make half of an almond butter sandwich. If I'm going to be gone a long time and I'm worried I won't find anything good to eat, I might put half of a sandwich on Dave's good seed bread in there. Or I might put some leftover thing that tastes good cold, or a potato. I've run around with a bag of a potato, an apple, hummus, and vegetables before. It sounds really weird, but then I'm out and about and I'm in a part of town where there's nothing that I eat in that area, and then I sit in my car and I eat my potato and apple and whatever, and I'm happy with that. It doesn't bother me, and it doesn't bother me if other people are around, because I guess I've evolved to the point where if Steve's around and he wants to go eat fast food, okay, I got something to eat. Or, it depends. If he goes to eat fast food, it's hard for me to smell it in the car. So last time he did that, I got a fruit cup, and I said, okay, I might be okay if I'm eating something too and not smelling what somebody else is eating. All right, well, this is going on a long time, so I want to show you the last shot of my soup for my white bean chili so you can see exactly what happened to it over the time I was just talking, is it went from being kind of watery to being a nice, thick, nice textured white bean chili. So I think that, just don't be impatient. Thank you so much for this cooking session. Your tips are appreciated. Oh, well, thank you, T.S. I hope you enjoyed it, and if you want me to keep doing this, let me know in your comments or on Facebook. Tell me on my Chef Julia support group or wherever you watch this that you want me to do more of these. Nice portable lunch ideas. Yeah, if you look at my daily food intake, you'll see that I take things with me a lot. If you like these videos, remember, look at my stockpile of beans here. I have so many. And I swore I was going to start doing these so that I would make myself cook more beans too. And so I'm doing really well this week. I made beans a couple of days ago. I've got some beans in my freezer. And now I've got white bean chili. Oh, and the other thing I was going to say is another way to stockpile your freezer is to have a bunch of cooked beans. So what I do is I'll make a pot of those beans, like the white beans, black beans, pinto beans. I'll eat them for a couple of days, and if I don't make a recipe like this, then what I'll do is I'll package the beans in half cup. I use little Ziploc bags, but I know some of you don't like plastic, so use whatever half cup portion you like, and then, or you can like put them in a little muffin tin and freeze them, and then take the frozen portion and put it in a big bag or something, or a big container. So then I have, like right now, I have a big bag of pinto beans, black beans, red beans, and borlotti beans in my freezer right now. I have got 3 or 4 bags of each big bag. So what does that do for me is on any given day I can make this chili without making any beans at all. It doesn't have to be white beans. I could go in there right now and get the equivalent of 3 cups of my little packages of beans, any kind, mix them all up. I could get 1 of each kind, and then I can bring them in here, let them defrost. I can pick up my onions and celery or whatever vegetables, bell peppers, garlic, and then I can add 4 cups of water, a little bit of my veggie bouillon base, which is why it's handy to have around, because if you don't have time or didn't have your frozen vegetable broth or box of it, water, teaspoon of that, and I can make myself a whole pot of bean stew, soup, chili, whatever you want to call it, with what I had in the freezer. And that's how I survive in the plant-based lifestyle, is I have my freezer stockpiled with beans, little soups already made up, brown rice, packages of brown rice, and pasta noodles, a lot of these packets of tofu crumbles, all different flavors, not in these bags, but in a bigger bag, and then I just get a few out, put them in the air fryer, crisp them up. And so those are all my secrets that I use. Let's see, going to roast my hatch chilies tomorrow and have a pot of alubia blanca on the stove right now. Michelle, yes, the alubia blanca, I think I have a bag of those right here now. Alubia blanca is a small white bean that works in kitchens from Mexico to Spain to New England. You can use them in salads or as baked beans, but they're good with everything. So you can make this with alubia blanca. All right, everybody. Thank you so much for watching this. And I apologize for the technical difficulties in the beginning, but you stuck with me and you came back and it all worked out. So this will be recorded. It will be on YouTube, Facebook. So we'll still have it, and hopefully the other one I'll delete it, the one that was a glitch. And as I do this more, maybe I'll get better at it, I hope. So thanks, everybody. Betsy says, those are great secrets. Thanks for sharing them. I do coaching, and I haven't been doing it a lot lately, but I have done, I might come back and start doing it again. I'm working with one person. I might come back and do like 4 sessions of coaching with people to individualize this. And also remember, I have retreats here in Azle, Texas. You come here in person. I have this kitchen classroom, and it's surrounded by a garden, vegetable garden, lots of stuff outside, windows everywhere. And we cook together. I tell you all my tips about how to eat this way, live this way. And it's 8 hours, and I think I've sold half the class for January, and I have plenty of openings for June next year. I'm doing it in October. That class has been sold out for quite a while. So if you're interested in coming out here to Texas, somebody, I wish I knew who that was, because it just says Facebook user. Can't wait for the October retreat. So I really don't know who it is, but yes, October is the next retreat, and spend a lot of time cooking ahead of time to give everybody lots of things to sample and nibble on during the long day, but we have a lot of fun. I think you'll really enjoy it. So thanks, everybody, and if there's a bean recipe or a type of bean you want me to make, post it on Facebook on the support group so that I'll know, because I have an extensive library of bean books, bean recipes I've made, and I've got about 5 times that many beans in my pantry. I've got a lot of beans in my pantry that I need to cook. So thanks everybody. I'm going to go ahead and end this, and I will catch up with you in the future. Bye-bye.